Hello and welcome to the Chaffin Church podcast. My name is Martin Holman, and with me, as always, meaning the last 3 weeks, Sir Ryan Thompson. And we have a great podcast for you today, in my opinion. Of course, I always tell people that to not put that adjective, to allow other people the honor of putting that adjective great on it. But
I'll take that adjective. This is going to be a great podcast with a great guest.
With a great guest. As a matter of fact, I'll just say it right now. I'm not going to introduce him yet, but I'll tell you who he is because I think it's important. The family reunion segment is going to be Coach Peter Bogren. He's a selectman in Paxton, a teacher, a union rep in Spencer, an outstanding basketball coach, and he actually is a great teammate as well. I know this because I played with him. Fantastic. And we'll also today have Chaffin Good News. The message segment is called How Do I Not Sin?
That's a good question. That's a very good question.
Ryan hasn't figured it out, but thank you. Thankfully, I have. And then we're also going to do Ask a Pastor. Speaking of How Do I Not Sin, Ryan, have you ever, it's kind of spring break time for a lot of the country. I know our spring break is a little different here in New England.
Yeah.
But when, did you ever do spring break?
Why are you asking me this question? Like, do you
It's
think
kind of just a random. I was thinking randomly. I'm not expecting you to confess something. I'm not going to give you like 50
I've never really done like, not a traditional spring break, right?
Well, have you
Like,
ever traveled during the months of March or April?
Not for the whole thing, but I'd take like a weekend away with friends. Yeah, something like that. But I'm not like going down to Cancun and all that.
Really?
Stuff. No.
Never. So I went 1 week, my mid-20s, to London, to England and Scotland. The next year I went to Valencia, Spain. And then a couple of years ago with my entire family, which by the way is not like a spring break thing. The next week was, 2 years ago I went to Spain, Valencia, Spain again. And that was fantastic. I mean, so I thought this conversation was going to be way better.
But because of my lack of cool life experiences,
I didn't say
it
that,
is not.
but I think you need to travel more.
Thank you.
All right, another question.
Travel is overrated. Someone's going to kill me after this, but there, I said it.
Okay, well, that's a whole nother podcast because that's more of a therapist podcast.
Oh, man, he went there.
Your favorite restaurant in the central Massachusetts area? A time where many of the places are starting to open up, like people are starting to more freely. I drove down Main Street in Holden today, and the restaurants were kind of packed. I mean, I can't see in them, but the parking lots. What is your favorite restaurant in the central Massachusetts area?
Well, I think, first of all, if you're watching this live, I would like you to type in your favorite restaurant in the central Massachusetts area because I am looking to eat good food. And
It's a great idea, by the way.
Yeah. So I think mine, and it's everyone's favorite, I feel like, is O'Connor's in West Boylston. I think it's
Really?
just epic. Yeah.
That is a good one. I guess I'm forced to think about this too because I didn't. I always gravitate toward chains. Don't kill me. I know, and my favorite is the 99. I love the 99. However, one of the reasons I love the 99 is because of their crackers and cheese. They don't have crackers and cheese anymore. I just found this out. So I'm not sure I'm ever going back.
So please, Marty is crowdsourcing a new favorite restaurant right now, so you have to put this in the chat now.
Put it in the chat, talk about it, and give me some ideas. Otherwise,
he's going to cry. He will literally cry. Do you want Marty to cry? If you don't want Marty to cry, you got to put some good restaurants in there.
we need some good restaurants.
He needs his crackers and cheese, man.
I feel like, what are some others? Princeton, the barn, the mountain barn.
Oh, that's a good one. What's
there-
that little The Over Easy Cafe on 140 has fantastic breakfast.
Great breakfast.
And brunch.
Is it better than Lou Rock's?
Oh, Lou Rocks. Well, Lou Rocks is cash only. Went there once and was not happy with that, or paying the I think it was like a $4.75 ATM fee.
Yes.
But you know what? The food was worth it, I have to say. Until I ate it. I'm going to leave this permanently unlocked. Marty's borrowing my iPad right now, which is why you see us passing this back and forth. It's not like we're passing notes in class or anything, but
yeah, leave that permanently unlocked. We're going to go in just a second to Ask a Pastor, and I'm just going to be really honest about this. I've been reading these, and I think eventually I'm going to stop reading these. That is not today.
What do you mean you're going to stop reading them?
What I mean is I'm just going to answer not reading. I'm just going to answer the question.
Oh, you're going to read your answer. I thought you were going to not read the questions anymore. I'm like, how are you going to select a question without reading
As
it?
a matter of fact, this week I put on my Facebook status, does anyone have a question? If you have a question for a pastor, what would it be? And a lot of people, in fact, 2 people actually got in a fight today as a result of, one of them was a pastor, and it wasn't really her fault. She was treated somewhat poorly, and I'm not going to go into names, but worked through it, and everything I think is better. That's why you're off Facebook.
It is. It is why I'm off Facebook.
It is why you're off Facebook. So,
Well,
anyway,
that's part of the reason anyway. But yeah, I do enjoy being off Facebook, I have to say.
So, today's Ask a Pastor, if I can remember what I'm about to read. Somebody asked me, I believe it was an Amanda, asked me, why do you believe in God?
You know, we're going to take a break here because I can't figure out how to leave this unlocked. So we're going to be right back,
You would
okay?
like me-
Okay, now we're back, now that Marty helped me figure out how to leave my iPad unlocked. It wasn't recognizing his face. Go figure.
It wasn't. I look nothing like you, Sir Ryan Thompson.
Do we look up? Yeah, maybe. Don't put that in the chat. No. That's me.
All right. Why do you believe in God? Amanda asks that question. So I'm going to come out right away and let you know that I'm not going to answer this question that I'm going to answer this question in a highly subjective way. I grew up like many in the 70s and 80s Midwest being taught a very concrete view of who God is and what the Bible is. I was taught by that culture that everything we need to know about God we can find in the Bible, and that there is a very specific set of beliefs that will one day allow my ethereal soul to waft up in the air once my body dies and drift to a place north of here called heaven to be with God who resides up there. This view also demanded a very literal interpretation of Scripture. I remember the first time I had a discussion with my dad about Romans 14. The Apostle Paul writes generally about an argument the believers were having concerning things that don't really matter. In this case, Paul addressed some Christians being offended that other Christians were eating meat that had been offered to idols at one time. I wondered aloud to my dad, who pastored in rural Ohio at the time, if Paul's arguments here could be used for current conversations the church was having, not least of which was whether Christian music could have drums and guitars. With Michael W. Smith on the rise, this was of particular importance to me. Frankly, I was tired of hiding my cassette tapes under my pillow. For years, even after college, except in the areas of music and entertainment, I held deeply to many of the fundamentalist teachings of my youth. I remember sitting with a close Christian friend of mine at a restaurant, this was in '99, in my early 20s, when he randomly mentioned the Earth's age as millions of years. My head spun, and I quickly got dizzy. How could this guy sit here in front of me and call himself a Christian? I wondered.
Imagine if he had told you you weren't going to have your crackers and cheese, just a few years from now.
I probably would have punched him. After all, the Bible is clear in its math that the world is roughly 6,000 years old. What followed was an intelligent conversation between friends as to how science had proved years before that the Earth's age was much older than a literal interpretation of Genesis would give it credit for. Honestly, I had a really hard time with the conversation. It struck at the core of who I was as a Christian and also what I thought Christians should believe. A few years later, I picked up 3 books that would really start to change how I thought. Blue Like Jazz by Donald Miller, Velvet Elvis by Rob Bell,
Yes.
and The Language of God by Francis Collins, who is the NIH director, was appointed by Obama and is still there. They turned my worldview upside down and forced me to think objectively about things that I always took for granted. In the years before this, or the first 25 to 30 years of my life, I believed what I was taught to believe. That is why I believed in God. I had amazing parents who taught me to love God and showed me how to do it, and a culture, both school and church, that taught me a systematic way that I should believe. And generally speaking, for about 22 years, I followed the letter of the law. Then I began to take liberties in the way I lived my life that were clearly disconnected with how and what I said I believed. Dumb decisions and a need to please people led to walking through a monstrous dark time in my life where I was confronted with what I believed based simply on how I wanted to act. One thing I always wanted, no matter what I believed, was to act in congruence with what I said I believed. Perfection wasn't necessary, but neither was pride. Eventually, I worked my way through some of those dark times and found myself, much like I did when I was younger, helping out at a church and loving the community, which we've been talking about a lot. On the other side, however, stood a wall of questioning and doubt as the internet lavished upon us more education than ever before, and my fundamentalist core doctrines began to fall one at a time. As this happened, the 3 aforementioned books altered my worldview even more and began to stretch the way I thought, and in some sense, the things I believed about God and Christianity. Not in a I'm done with faith sort of way, but definitely in a deconstructive sense. I think I'm almost done. This happens all the time. Many of my friends have walked away from faith in God and church. Now here I was with some of the same questions. I actually think this is an important evolution for a person who grows up with faith. There has to be some transition that allows the person to think freely about what he or she believes about God and faith. And now here I was, and I wondered if I would come out believing on the other side. One of the things that bothering me through this whole process was how horrible evangelicals were about defending their faith. Whenever I heard someone make the reason for their faith because the Bible says it, I wanted to rip my ears out. I would definitely rather hear because I just do. Everyone puts their faith in things they can't see, so I'm okay with one of those things being God. What I'm not okay with any longer is people checking their brain at the door and accusing scientists of hating God as a reason why they're researching and proving their hypotheses. During all the reading I was doing, I happened upon an article while I perused Rob Bell's church website. The article was entitled, "How Can the Bible Be Authoritative?" by a guy named N.T. Wright, who was an Anglican bishop in England at the time. It took me hours to read the essay or speech, and at the end of it, I felt like God injected me with a belief serum. It had been years since I felt so strongly about my faith, and all it took was reading a gentleman who clearly loved God, expertly handled the scripture and the context it was written in, and communicated that the history and literature aspects of the Bible must line up with its theology and vice versa. There are, of course, other authors and pastors who are faithful to Scripture as a whole, and not simply as a means to teach a specific belief system. For me, however, N.T. Wright's mentorship through his writings in the Bible, combined with the faithful testimony of my parents, family, and mentors over the years, are why I've chosen to place my faith in God, and specifically Jesus the Messiah. That's why I believe in God. And I have a few other paragraphs. I'm going to cut those short because we're going to get on to the next segment. Any thoughts on that?
No, I like your story, and I really like all the books that you mentioned. I think you should all go out and read at least a few of them.
Yeah, they're great. Great authors. And, of course, Rob Bell is very controversial at this point.
But his writing is pretty accessible.
Oh,
you know,
very
his and Donald Miller's writing, very accessible, and great stuff there.
Yeah. Okay, so it's time for the family reunion. I feel like maybe it needs some special music. Dun, 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 dun. Okay.
Could do something.
Maybe
like
Mac Powell and the family reunion. Do you know who that is?
I do know who Mac Powell is, and I do not want him to be any part of our family reunion. I don't.
This is why I produce the audio podcast.
First, you had Michael W. Smith, which you know you get some like ancient Christian music, you know, props for that.
So does Netflix.
What do you mean? Wait, what?
Have we not talked about this? This is a whole nother discussion.
Let's save that for next episode.
Okay.
But I'm actually intrigued.
We're focused.
Yes,
We're focused.
We are focused. We're very focused people.
Okay. Today, family reunion, we have a special guest. His name is Peter Bogren. I call him Coach at times. So if I refer to him as Coach, we'll talk about that. But let's give it up for Pete Bogren. Yes!
Who could that be?
Woo!
Who could it be? Oh my goodness!
The crowd goes wild!
It's Pete Bogren.
I always bring my own crowd just in case no one applauds.
Oh man.
Oh. Just in case no one applauds.
Just in case, you never know.
All right. So, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for asking me.
Yeah, this is so cool.
This is very cool. You guys do a nice job.
Thank you. I would ask what your favorite episode is so far, but there's only two, and one of them had Ryan, and I don't want to make Ryan feel bad if it's the other one.
Obviously, my favorite one is the one with Ryan, even though I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. It's still, Ryan, it is still my favorite. Let's make that clear.
Okay.
Excellent.
Okay, first weird, awkward question right off the bat. What was your favorite COVID activity of 2020?
Holy mackerel. Coordinating the handing out of meals for the Spencer East Brookfield School District. So when they stopped school on March 13th, my superintendent was most concerned about getting the children in those two towns fed. There's some needy children out there.
Yeah.
And so he put together this plan to distribute lunches and kind of handed it off to me and said, let's see if we can make this work. And we did that from the end of March until, about the beginning of August.
Wow.
Yeah, it was great. It was the response from the community was incredible. I think we handed out 5 lunches the first day, and we were up close to 200 by the time we were done.
Wow.
What an incredible thing.
Yeah, it was awesome.
And was it K through 12? Was it kind of an assortment?
It was supposed to be K to 12, but if an adult happened to come by and claim they had a kid, gave them a lunch. We just wanted to feed everybody.
Yeah.
You know, the need is great. And obviously, when you have people out of work or can't get to work, the need becomes greater.
Yeah.
And we were there to a small part to try to fulfill it. So it was good.
Okay. So we've known each other for, I mean, how long? 2000.
It's got to be 10, 12 years.
Yeah, 2009. I think that's when.
Yeah, probably about 12 years.
I
now.
met Pete at another excellent restaurant. in
You
Central
did. That's right.
Massachusetts.
We sat together chatting.
What restaurant was it?
That's what's the name of it? The Cajun place you take us to.
Nola's.
Nola's. I was going to call it Po' Boys, but that's what I get.
That might be my favorite right now. That's
Isn't
so
it good?
I've eaten there with you 3 or 4 times.
It's not something you can typically get around here, but they do a pretty good job.
And it's such a little place.
Yeah.
Yes.
You wouldn't even notice it, but the food is outstanding.
And you can eat outside. So what's not to love about that?
Oh, it's great.
Yeah. In fact, you better eat outside right now because it's so
Right now,
small.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, so we've known. It's 2009. We played basketball together.
Yeah.
And you were a great teammate. First of all.
Well, we had a great team.
Yes.
I mean, talent-wise, we were good.
Yes.
But what a great group of guys. We had a lot of fun together.
Yeah. And you naturally are a coach. Like it is in your blood. You can just feel it. When I talk to you, you have coachism exuding out of you. Is that a word?
It is now.
It is.
If it wasn't, it is now.
What is it about coaching that you love?
You know, I don't know if I could put my finger on it. I love competition.
Okay.
I've always been big in that. And while I probably did a little bit of coaching when I shouldn't have when I was with you guys, coaching the high school kids it's such a pleasure. So I coached girls basketball for 30 whatever years, 37 years, 35 years, whatever it was. And going into the gym every day, I always got their best 2 hours. I'd say to the parents afterwards, I say, boy, I'll tell you, your daughter's so wonderful. She shows up every day. She works hard. And they look at me like, my daughter, are you sure? And that I got their best 2 hours of the day because they were doing something they enjoyed. And I was very fortunate to coach a lot of young ladies that were also very competitive. So they didn't mind getting pushed.
Yeah.
And because I was able to push them, we were able to try some different things that maybe other coaches couldn't try. And it was a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
And how many championships, state championships, did you win?
We didn't win any states.
No states?
No. We won a couple of district titles
Okay.
between Wachusett and Notre Dame with my two coaching stops.
Okay.
We had one undefeated regular season and got beat in the state semifinals at the DCU Center, but never quite won that state title.
Never. Okay. So maybe when you go back.
If. I'm getting old. I'm getting old.
Yeah. I mean, you're 45 now, 46.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Let's see. I was 45 when I met you, probably.
You were 45. Okay.
There you go.
All right. And so you have kind of that leadership thing going on. So you've coached a lot. You are also a selectman in Paxton.
Correct.
Now Paxton is kind of like, I've been thinking about this. It's kind of the redheaded stepchild of the Wachusett area. Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't know if I've ever heard it referred to
Maybe
that
I'm
way.
wrong.
I didn't move away, by the way, because you said that. I just wanted to lean back a little bit because of my back. No, Paxton is in the Wachusett district. We're the smallest town. Okay, so
Okay, all right.
So well, Princeton and Paxton both are pretty small. So the overall budget we only account for about 10% of it.
Okay.
However, we're a great town.
Yeah.
And so we're small but great. And when we need to make our opinion well stated, we do so.
Yeah.
But redheaded stepchild, I've never been called that before.
That's how I always felt, and I think I called you a few months back, and now maybe it was like last fall, and my family and I went to a place called Turn Back Time, which is well into Paxton, and usually when I go through Paxton, I go through like to Spencer, which of course we'll talk about too, but we went through Paxton, like through the heart of it, or it felt like the heart of it, and I remember thinking, this place is beautiful. Like,
It's a beautiful town.
I had no idea.
So one of the things that makes Paxton unique is how much property is owned by outside governmental entities. So the city of Worcester owns quite a bit of watershed property. Leicester owns some watershed property and some reservoirs. Of course, the state owns Moore State Park, which is absolutely, if you've never been to Moore State Park, you have to go. It is such a peaceful, serene place to walk around. Sometimes it gets a little crowded because a lot of people like to go. There's so much hiking and stuff.
Yeah.
But just to go back in time to the old mills and stuff.
Yeah.
And then we got Anna Maria College, which is a small college.
Yeah.
But again, it's a beautiful campus.
Yeah, I mean, Carrie and I actually had our pregnancy pictures taken there. Carrie was pregnant with the twins, and we went to Morris State Park, and it was beautiful.
Oh, it's beautiful up there. Yeah.
Incredible. So what does a selectman do?
We basically set the policy for the town.
Okay.
We have a lot of roles. So in my role as a selectman, I work with the finance committee on the budget. The finance committee does it, but I'm the liaison and I answer a lot of questions. Of course, we are the governing body, so police chief, fire chief, all those people who report to the town administrator, well, the town administrator reports to us. But it's a board of three. Again, small town, so we only have three people. People living in Holden will tell you that their selectmen meetings are a lot more interesting because there's a lot more people and dynamic personalities. I happen to serve with some great people.
Yeah.
And we just kind of guide the town through the murky waters of local government.
So you're like the church board of local government.
Yeah, I would say that's actually a pretty good analogy.
The last 2 years have been some pretty murky waters.
It's been a challenge for anybody in a leadership position, Ryan. You're absolutely right. Anybody in a leadership position, whether it's a church, whether it's a business, whether it's a community, whether it's a school, it's been a real challenge. And that's where you really start to see the leaders step up, because hard decisions have to be made. Sometimes they're not pleasant decisions to make, but they have to get made. And you're right. That's all part of that, navigating those murky waters.
And of course, we're not done with those murky waters, probably. However, you also do this as a union rep in Spencer.
Yeah, I'm the union president in Spencer. Get that? I'm a conservative and a union president at the same time.
Okay.
Tell me that's not a strange mix.
Sounds fantastic.
It's quite a mix.
I mean, think about that. Like, how has that been in terms of? I'm assuming your schools are now all in.
K to 6 we are, pre-K to 6.
Oh, yeah.
And then 7 through 12 will come in the Monday after vacation, which is the 26th.
And we've talked a little bit. Tell me a little bit about leading through some of the panic there.
It's hard to talk about only because it's been such a range of actions that we've had to take. So we're very fortunate. Let's start with this. You hear a lot on the news about unions and schools and the divisiveness that can be caused by certain union leadership. I'm very fortunate. I get along exceptionally well with our school leadership, with the district leadership. We work together very well. Told you my superintendent put together that meal program, handed it off to me, and I pretty much took it from there. It's a great working relationship, and because of that, we've been able to avoid some of the pitfalls that some of the other school districts have had to go through, writing MOUs and trying to negotiate every single time there's a change. We've been able to stay away from hard writing of MOUs and just kind of agreed that, look, we're going to meet often. If something comes up, let's tackle it, and it's worked out really well.
Now, through all that, and really through your leadership, because you've kind of you kind of gravitate towards leading roles. How does your faith intersect with or come into play with leading in those areas?
It comes into play a lot. So I'll relay a story which I think outlines it pretty well. I've got a young teacher, young compared to me, definitely not compared to Ryan, but young compared to me. And he's had a tough year. He had some incidents that took place just before the COVID shutdown. And then in this school year, everybody's had a tough time. But his role has changed quite a bit. He's tried to be amenable to whatever they need. And he's had a tough year. So we even had an incident where if you could file a grievance against the union president, I think you would have filed a grievance against me. But he's had a really tough week. And I sat him down, and I could see he was nervous about it. I said, don't be nervous. I said, we had our disagreement. It's done. Well, that comes from the teachings from the Bible. Because if you hold on if you have a grudge against somebody, all it does is eat you up. And the Bible tells us that we have to forgive.
Yeah.
You have to turn the other cheek. It's I know it's kind of cliche at this point when they say it, but you really have to do that because I represent this young man. So I had to teach him. I had to say, look, don't worry about it. It's okay. We're all in this together. And really, that's what this whole world is about, is that we're in this together. And that's what the Bible keeps telling us. We're in this together. And if you're going to try to do it as an individual, you're not going to get very far. So I'm the union president, and I wear that hat, and I accept that responsibility. But I have to go back to my faith often to, number one, guide my judgment. Number two, put aside any personal feelings I might have and understand that can't be important. Because inside everybody, there's something good.
Yeah.
Not always shining through as much as we'd like. And that's as far as the union president goes, that's where my faith comes in.
Cool. How did you connect to Chaffin Church?
Through you.
Through me.
So, yeah, through you. Obviously, we played basketball together quite a few years ago. And, I remember now. So, I'm a Formula One fan. And they were racing in Europe, and McLaren had happened to put out a tweet asking for responses. I responded and showed up on your page, on your feed, and then you reached out to me, Coach, and we started talking. And you said, "Hey, I'm at Chaffin Church and just started here, and I was at the time looking for a new place to worship, and here we are."
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool. Any questions, Ryan?
No, I don't know how this locked, but
Right?
I thought you guys straightened that out when I was over there.
we were trying really hard, and I believed in Marty. I believed so deeply in him, and And he let me down.
Here's an interesting question. Let's see if you can remember this. The first time we ever ate lunch together, where was it?
First time we had lunch. Well, I know we ate lunch at the 99. Was that the first time?
No, there was a first time.
Boy. See, that's the advantage of youth. You get to be my age, and some of those memories start to fade.
Oh, but
Remind me.
no. Marty is a freak of nature, remembering like the little details from the past.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So the reason I even brought it up
Yeah.
is because it's his favorite restaurant, O'Connor's.
We were at O'Connor's.
We went
really?
to O'Connor's.
How about that?
And we the first time we ate, we not the first time we ate, because I was 33 at the time.
Yeah, I was quite a bit older than that, so that would be
45
kind
or
of
so.
45. We'll go with that.
All right. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us. I'm gonna share the message now, and you guys join in. I don't think I have any interesting games. Maybe I do, like last week. But my game about the denominations, I thought it was great.
It was okay. I just didn't understand it. I don't know. Maybe it was the explanation. Maybe it was me being dense. I don't know. I didn't understand it, which is why I was trying to make a moo noise, and you were like, "What was that?" So that's what you have ahead of you to look forward to listen to.
Wow, look at the time.
If it gets awkward, just say moo, and I'll be like, Baptists. Baptists are here. So, how do I not sin? Okay? How do I not sin? So, parents love their children, and they are supposed to bring their kids up and influence them in the way, and I'm just going to use this term because it's important to the theme of my message. They're supposed to influence them in the way of order. Now, order is a very subjective word. But would you say that's accurate? Like, that parents are supposed to influence their kids and teach them some sort of order?
Yeah, that's how they learn boundaries.
Okay, that's exactly right. So, we are never more godlike, as we are made in His image, when we are creating order from disorder. Now, don't look in my bedroom, because that's a little crazy. But when we are creating order from disorder, but here's the thing: kids don't naturally get order, right? All you have to do is go into our basement where the kids play, and you know that it's somewhat disheveled. But God created order. And then when things became disorderly through, let's say, sin, Jesus came and showed how to create order from immense amount of disorder, and to do so without power or money. So, the passage we're going to look at today is found in 1 John 3, 1 through 7. And John refers to God as Father. So here's a question I want to ask you two right off the bat, which I think it's an interesting question. Do you guys have a problem referring to God as Father?
I mean,
we're getting intense right in here.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a bunch of historical context in there, right, about why the writers of the Bible wanted to call God, Father. But interestingly, in the Old Testament, it literally translates to like parental unit. Like
Okay.
It literally is totally genderless in most of the places in Genesis when they're talking about God as Father. And
Okay.
So, I'm fine with saying God as parent, God as father, God as mother. I don't really have any super huge stake in the game, but I do think God is maternal at times, and I don't see any reason why we can't call God many names in that way.
Okay. What do you think?
That was an interesting answer. No, I mean that. I agree. I don't have any issue calling God as Father, because it's my father, my earthly father, is part of the reason that I was created. But we're all here because we were created by our Father.
Right. So I mentioned God as Father one time on LinkedIn. I think I put it on several social media. And someone asked me, and I think it was one of my colleagues in the UCC. Someone asked me, why do you always refer to, or not you, but why do people always refer to God as Father? And I wrote back, I meant no offense, I probably am just privileged in some way. Like I didn't mean to be like cocky. I meant to be very humble in it. But I could see this particular person's point, and agree with you that if you believe that there's a God who supersedes all material matter and earth in general, and who created it all, then
He has to transcend gender as well, right?
Correct.
So, yeah.
Correct. So John the Evangelist wrote some letters, and he seems to be a sweet old man. I mean, this guy's writing is very nice. Theologians believe that he wrote this 95 AD to 110 AD in Ephesus. And the central themes in 1 John are fellowship and the love of God. So here is the passage of Scripture in chapter 3, verses 1 through 7. See how very much our Father loves us, for he calls us his children, and that is what we are. But the people who belong to this world don't recognize that we are God's children because they don't know him. Dear friends, we are already God's children, but he has not yet shown us what we will be like when Christ appears. But we do know that we will be like him, for we will see him as he really is. And all who have this eager expectation will keep themselves pure, just as he is pure. Everyone who sins is breaking God's law, God's order is another way of saying that. For all sin or disorder is contrary to the law of God. And you know that Jesus came to take away our sins. And there is no sin in him. Anyone who continues to live in him will not sin, but anyone who keeps on sinning does not know him or understand who he is. Dear children, don't let anyone deceive you about this. When people do what is right, it shows that they are righteous, even as Christ is righteous. So, sin, one way of describing sin is missing the mark, which is a very generic, very unspecific term, missing the mark. But we know that God is a God of order. And so, what are some relational things that bring disorder? Bitterness, revenge, hate, anger,
Unforgiveness.
unforgiveness. Yeah. And so, what we want to do is we want to figure out, how do we stay away from disorder? How do we stay away from sin? How do we stay away from and not sin? Well, as Ryan said earlier, that's a really, really difficult task. But here's what we do know. Going to the movies or dancing are not necessarily sin. However, I was taught that growing up. So what is sin? Or rather, how do we stay away from sin? So I have three thoughts here based on this passage of Scripture, and the three thoughts are this. The first one is that we understand God's love for us. That we understand that there is a God who supersedes the paternal, the maternal, that supersedes all of creation, and that God loves us. I mean, that if we could get that, if we could understand that, it would take so much insecurity out of our lives. I mean, I was talking to somebody about middle school earlier, and you do a lot of work. I mean, you teach in a middle school, right?
I do.
And there's so much insecurity in middle schoolers, isn't it? Like,
Yeah, it's part of the development of the brain.
yeah. But sometimes people stay in that. When they don't mature, people stay in that idea of insecurity, and they live in that world of insecurity, and they don't really grow out of it. And that's because they don't understand that God has created them to be loved, and that he loves them, or she loves them. I mean, that's not the only reason people are insecure, but even Christians can live in that insecurity. I mean, we've all seen church power struggles, right? And in the midst of that, one of the things you realize is God's love is not in that. It's just not. The second thing is this, that we carry an expectation of God's return. Now, this is really interesting because I think the reason why this is important, and because John talks about this, the reason why this is important is because it is important to expect God is doing something in the world and that he is not done with whatever he's doing. And so we can expect that his return, that he is coming in some way. It says, let's see if I can find it. But we do know that we will be like him, for we will see him as he really is. And all who have this eager expectation will keep themselves pure just as he is pure. So when I was 15 or 16, I would be at home.
I always love the young Marty stories.
Marty
whenever I
stories.
hear him start and he was like, any age below 18, I'm like, this is going to be a good story.
Well, this is not that good of a story, but
okay, never
I'll
mind.
say I would be in my house, and I never wanted to disappoint my dad. Like, some people were just rebels. That was not me. Like, if I had something underneath my pillow, it was definitely going to be Michael W. Smith or Sandy Patty. And some of you don't even know who Sandy Patty is. It's probably a good thing. Do you know?
No idea.
Do you know? She's saying, love in any language.
That literally added zero clarity.
Yeah, okay. I'm glad I'm not the only one. Thank you, Ryan.
I'm sorry you guys missed out on the Christian culture that was Sandy Patty. So I'm just kidding. Anyways, secondly, so we expect that God is returning in some way. When my dad would come home, I would expect he was coming home, and I didn't want to disappoint him. And so sometimes when Christians fall into the trap of saying to themselves, this is all there is. I'm just going to do what I'm going to do. We forget that there's a God, and he's there, and he's coming home, and we shouldn't want to disappoint him. We should live in that expectation that we are called to be like him, and so we'll keep ourselves pure. Thirdly, we continue to build order into the world God created. We continue to build order into the world God created. And this is just kind of an obvious thing, but we have to give something to the world. I mean, the early Christians created hospitals. Early Christians rose out of persecution and built an infrastructure in the Roman Empire to take care of those who are sick and hurting and needy and poor and beaten down. And in some ways, the church turned that around and became the power structure. And we have to be really careful about that we are called to build order in whatever way we can into the world the Father created. Now,
So order, we're not talking about like hierarchy, right? Like, because sometimes when I think about the word order, it's like,
great.
Right?
Let's discuss this. What is order in the way, I go back to Genesis.
Right.
Okay. So taking care of, tending God's creation, right? That was Adam and Eve were there in that perfect world, and they were taking care of the animals. They were taking care of God's creation. Now, so materialism then becomes, if we're not careful, something that is part of disorder.
Right, that's like, the Roman view of order would have been very like, power-based. The order is a hierarchy. I am in charge. You are my underling. You pay taxes to Caesar. I don't. I'm a Roman citizen. I'm here to make sure you stay in line, right? Like
Yes.
that sort of social order that is very, yeah,
Power hungry.
right.
Absolutely.
But then Christ turned that around.
Oh yeah.
Because there's a man with no earthly power, if you will, no money, no power that had been given him, and yet he ruled over all.
Right. Well, that's one of the things he said to Pilate. You really, you
Yeah.
have no power over me.
You got nothing on me.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. So I have a note here that I cannot remember of an illustration, so I'm not even going to share that.
That's so sad.
It's so sad.
This is like the crackers and the cheese all over again. Marty has cried twice in one episode, people.
I don't know if
twice.
that's true, but I will say this. One of the things I have heard about the podcast from last week is that it was long.
It was long last
I will cut that illustration out, but it is a podcast, so you can always come back to it. My wife commutes 40 minutes to work, so I told her, listen, you go in there 3 times, you'll be done with it. So this is what I'll say. We sin the least when we understand love the most. And so let's not be focused on trying not to sin by being a good boy or a good girl. But let's be focused on love and loving the people in our world and leading them towards love. Okay? I want to encourage you to step into the love of Christ. That is good news. And speaking of which, it's time for Chaff and Good News. It's a good transition, right?
It's a great transition.
Chaff and Good News.
That's a nice segue.
Do you ever watch hockey?
All the time.
All the time? Do you?
I do enjoy it, but I don't do it often.
One of my early questions that I had written, I don't know if you noticed this, to you, like when I actually talked about spring break, one of my early questions was, what's your favorite sport teams? And then I realized Brian doesn't like sports all that much.
I don't.
And-
I always have fun, like if I go to a hockey game or I go to a baseball game, I have a lot of fun and I actually enjoy watching in person, but there's something about watching it on the TV or like playing fantasy sports that I'm just like, this is so boring. So horrible.
So the UMass men's Minutemen won their first hockey national title, which is shocking to me because Massachusetts, it seems like they would have a ton of national titles.
That's their first Division I national title in any sport.
Congratulate! Did they win it yet last night or
No, they won it Saturday night.
Saturday night?
Great game.
Great.
You didn't watch it.
I didn't. No, I typically don't watch hockey unless the Penguins are in the Stanley Cup.
There was there's a chance they could go to the Stanley Cup Finals this year.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll have to buy tickets, but they'll be able to go.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
There was a goal in the UMass game that was absolutely one of the prettiest goals I've ever seen, a shorthanded goal that if you ever get a chance to watch the highlights, even if you're not a hockey fan, you'll appreciate the athleticism.
Really?
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Awesome. Who did they beat?
They beat St. Cloud.
Okay. Minnesota, right? Oh, wow. All right. Down with the Minnesotans. It's probably not a
I
good
have a
time
funny
to say
story about St. Cloud, Minnesota.
Okay.
Next episode.
that. Okay. Next episode, St. Cloud, Minnesota. Julian Edelman retired from the NFL after 12 seasons as a New England Patriot. Does that make you sad or?
Yeah, because it's the big three are now gone.
Yeah.
Brady, Gronkowski, and Edelman. So the offensive juggernaut have all left.
They're gone.
What a video that he put out though, huh? Did you see it?
I didn't see it.
Oh,
Was it awesome?
Edelman is a classy guy.
Yeah, he is.
He really is.
Yep. All right. Well, good for the Patriots. Good for Edelman. They released him first, right? So he.
Yes, but he talked about how proud he was to have played his whole career and retire as a Patriot.
Wow.
I don't know if that was a little shot at Brady or not, but he was very proud of that fact.
That's good.
Yeah, he was
Good
very
for him. So birthdays, Molly Benoit, part of Chaffin Church, and Tim Malooly. They both had a birthday this week, so happy birthday to you two. And If you have a birthday, or you know someone who has a birthday, and they're not on social media, let us know. Jeff and good news. Finally, the Holden Road Race is switching hands, and Be Like Brit will be organizing the event from here on out. And for years, well, I actually did it for years, was the organizer with a few other people. And then Angela Rogers, the last couple of years, has done a fantastic job as the organizer, the director of the Holden Road Race. She's done a great job through. Obviously, last year was a really hard, difficult year for races of all kinds. And this year, it's going to Be Like Brit. And, of course, the majority of the funds. By the way, the Holden Road Race is an annual Thanksgiving 5K that takes place here in Holden. And so Be Like Brit is a nonprofit organization that builds orphanages in Haiti, and they're based here in central Massachusetts. So they are going to take over the reins, and so great job, Be Like Brit, and thank you, Angela Rogers, for your hard, amazing work with the Holden Road Race. She's actually going to be here on the podcast in a few weeks. So that's Chaffin Good News. If you have any good news, let us know on Facebook Messenger or chaffinchurch155@gmail.com. A few announcements. May 7th, true story, an outdoor comedy show right here at 155 Shrewsbury Street with Jerry Caruso and Dan Cohane and myself.
Wow, they're adding Marty in.
They're adding me
They
in.
must be desperate.
So you're not the top bill.
I'm not the top bill yet.
Wait, is this like, when bands, you have like the headline band, but then you have like what are they called? Like the bands that start the show.
I mean, they're basically just
Opener.
Opener.
Yeah.
Are you the
Well,
opener?
Are
you the main act?
I'm gonna find out if I can be the funny guy who comes in. So I got invited to a friend of mine named G. That was his name. He lives in Worcester, and he was a comedian, but he invited me to a show years ago in the Union Station. So Carrie and I went, and so there was this guy who was not the narrator, the MC,
Yes.
in between, and he was a comedian. He was by far the raunchiest. I'm not going to be that guy. However, I'm going to see if I can be the MC of the event. I'll still be funny.
I think you'd be good at that.
Yeah.
Just
But I
don't
won't
talk
have
about
my-
Mac Powell and
the family
and Michael
reunion.
W. Smith and what's Sandy Patty, whatever her name was.
And Sandy Patty.
However, he could always start off now. When I was 17,
And then all of a sudden it's a good story.
It is. It's always a good story.
And then May 8th, we're having an outdoor work day here at Chaffin Church from 10 to 2, May 8th. And we'll be preparing for the spring. I think we'll even be putting together an outdoor area for us to be meeting during the summer. So I think that's going to be pretty cool. So if you enjoy this podcast, feel free to support us with a tax-deductible gift at chaffin.church/giving, or you can send in your gifts to 155 Shrewsbury Street in Holden, Massachusetts, 01520, or text any amount to 84321. That's what we got going on so far. Thank you for joining us today here on the Chaffin Church podcast. Thank you, Pete.
thank you for inviting me. This was fun.
I enjoyed you too.
It was an enjoyable evening.
Yeah.
I got a little ahead of myself.
It was fun. It was fun. And thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for hosting.
You don't have anything else to say to Pete?
Other than thank you.
Wow, nothing like putting you right on the spot, huh?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you're a great guest. I wish, I wish I hadn't just talked for so long last week, because now we need to make this episode shorter. I wish we could have talked to you for longer, but
I think people will appreciate the shorter episode.
perhaps. But there's always room for another episode with Pete at some time down the line.
There's some great people in this church, though, that I'm anxious to hear from.
Such a humble guy.
That's what makes him
Such
so
a humble
awesome.
guy.
Yeah.
Oh, this is an amazing church.
Yeah.
It really is. And I'm an outsider up until recently.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how people open up and let you in and bring you in and want to make people who are not here regularly part of the family.
That's so good. That's another podcast altogether. Wow. I could keep going. I'm not going to do it, though. Hey, that's the good news for today. Do you want to do this part? You did such
Oh,
a good
no,
job.
no, no.
last
You
week.
go ahead. I did last week.
That's the good news for today. Now go and give some out.